So, Ryan, this is the thesis of the whole talk today.
Oh no, we're starting with the thesis.
Ready? What is it about murder mysteries that you love so much?
Well, there's a lot, and guys, hey, thank you guys for being here. This is gonna be fun. Yeah, and Ali, thanks for doing this. I mean, I don't know. I got into murder mysteries at a really young age, and I think when I first started reading Agatha Christie books and watching those early movies, it was a genre that felt both very fun and very accessible, and also kind of adult and sort of dangerous. And but then as an adult, I feel like it's, I guess answering a little more specifically, the reason I love making, one of the big things that made me want to start making this series of movies is, I think for years and years when I was growing up, even really great murder mystery adaptations were generally period pieces, or if they were modern day, they were really set in kind of a timeless little kind of, bubble of outside of the real world, modern day. And kind of realizing that's not what Agatha Christie or any of the Golden Age detective novelists were doing. They were, even if they weren't extraordinarily political per se, they were always writing to their time and to their world. And also the murder mystery form is if you think about the basic ingredients of it, you have a group of suspects, and you have a power structure within that group, and the person at the top of the pyramid is typically the person who's going to get bumped off. And that's an incredibly potent way to have a very entertaining piece of art that is also a microcosm of society or an aspect of society. It's a really great way of engaging with the world around you, this genre. So a big part of why I wanted to jump into doing this series is just the notion of, let's do this form that I really love. Let's try and do it really, really well, and let's unapologetically set it in the present moment and put that to work.
I will say I have some sympathy for modern writers, as I'm sure you do, of murder mysteries, insofar as these things.
Yeah.
They're a thing, right? If we all got one, I think we might. And they can limit writing in that regard, but you actually embrace them to a certain extent.
I embrace them. I think that this is another thing where I think we kind of have faulty memories, because we think that, I don't know, we imagine that stories back then didn't have to deal with that, when the reality is, I mean, going back to, Sherlock Holmes books, to Conan Doyle, but back also to the early days of the genre, they were using the modern technology. I mean, there's so much stuff in Christie where it's like the modern use of phone lines and party lines and operators to create alibis, and they were taking advantage of new technology when it was available. And so I see these things as they should be opportunities in terms of new ways to create deception. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wake Up Dead Man, which some of us will be lucky enough to watch later today, definitely has fun with that. I think it's fair enough to say. So, shall we talk a little bit about Mr. Ustinov?
Yes.
Yes. Which was he was a part of the beginning of the love affair. What does he mean to you? Why do you like his Poirot so much?
So, Peter Ustinov, who played Poirot first, there was a series, to set the context, and you guys probably know a lot of this already, but I'll say it. So when I was a kid, there was kind of a series of Agatha Christie adaptations that kicked off a trend of the all-star murder mystery adaptation. And the first one was Murder on the Orient Express, with Albert Finney playing Poirot, and it had just everyone in the universe in the cast, and it was a big fun thing. Mm-hmm. The next one they did was Death on the Nile. That's personally my favorite murder mystery adaptation of all time, and it stars Peter Ustinov as Poirot, David Niven as Hastings, and it's an extraordinary blend of an incredibly fun movie, so entertaining, what I love about Ustinov's Poirot, especially, he hits the sweet spot in that movie. I love him in Evil Under the Sun also, where he goes a little more camp. The whole movie goes a little more camp, which I do adore. But in Death on the Nile, he's playing Poirot straight, but also gets the essential humor and clownishness of him, but in a way that his amount of self-regard is hilarious. And so that movie, when I was a kid watching that with my family, that just felt like the most fun a movie could possibly be. And emulating that form is also a big part of making these movies.
Yeah, it can appeal to a whole family.
Yeah.
And also, I love seeing a universe where we live in chaos, but in this world, things can make a certain amount of sense.
Oh, that would be nice.
Wouldn't it be nice?
That'd be nice.
We have a clip of Evil Under the Sun, and I don't want to fight with you, but I personally enjoy the campness enough that I prefer it to Death on the Nile. So.
Yeah, really. All right.
I know.
All
I'm wrong.
right.
I'm wrong.
All
Shall we?
right.
Shall we play a brief clip?
God, how much fun is that?
Which character do you suspect may not make it through to the end of the film? Now, I enjoy that for its sheer, unadulterated camp. That is just... And by the way, if You're the Top is a little bit annoying for you, do not watch that film. What does that teach you, that sort of scene? We don't see much of Poirot, but we are sort of reintroducing ourselves to a lot of the characters. What does a scene like that bring up to your mind?
I mean, how good is that? I mean, first of all, just Dan Rigg and Maggie Smith just going at it. Too. That just love to see it. It's extraordinary, and it's so much fun. It's so delightful, and also, if you really watch it, it's extraordinary the efficiency with which it's communicating so much to you in every single shot about the dynamics between the characters in a way that for me is like really, even just watching it now, I'm like, shit, I gotta remember this. Because as opposed to having, a monologue from somebody where they say, oh, she's, I used to have this connection with my husband, and now this glamorous woman is coming up, and I feel like a little mouse. Then you see Jane Birkin there. You see the exchange of looks between them. You get all of it like that. And it sticks in your head better than it ever would through dialogue. And the fact that they do it while doing a Cole Porter tune and us laughing our asses off and just having a delightful time. That's true great. Murder mystery adaptation right there. That's what cinema can do, and yeah, I love it, man. It's so good.
You've been very self-effacing in the past, and you continue to be because you're very charming like that. But one of the things you say is that so much of direction is casting, and to me, and we talked about this briefly before we started, so many charming people all in one room, and you get to just sort of let them go off the leash and attack the characters in their own way. Is casting one of the most enjoyable parts of the whole production of making a murder mystery for you?
Yeah, it really is. It's so much fun. I mean, although it's a lot more fun once you have the actors together and you get them in the room and let them start playing. But casting is a blast because also, I mean, casting for any movie is fun because it's a weird thing where when you go to somebody for a part, a whole different version of the movie exists in your head for the moments where you think they might be playing that part. And then if it doesn't happen, that movie dissolves into the air and the next person comes along that you're offering it to, and then you have a whole different... It's a really interesting, fun process, but the real fun starts once the actors actually show up in the room. Yeah.
I can't imagine you ever dreamed, and I say this with respect, of Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc. That must have been a surreal realization that this is really happening.
Yeah, I mean, I when I first wrote the part, he was I think like the first person that I actually did want to go to for it, but he was busy doing I forget which Bond movie it was he was doing at the time, so we couldn't get him. But then, and I forget which Bond movie this was. There was something that happened where they had a delay, and suddenly he had a 3-month window, and we jumped on it and made the offer to him, and like 5 weeks later we were shooting with him outside of Boston, so it was serendipity. Yeah.
And you've spoken before about when you have Daniel Craig as your lead, it's amazing how quickly people say, yeah, no, I'm going to do it. Yeah, I think I'm free.
Yeah. And God bless, I mean, all of that original cast, I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis, Toni Collette, Michael Shannon, Don Johnson, all of them. I mean, God bless them for jumping on, because it was It wasn't like a proven quantity. It was this thing where it was an ensemble, and we had Daniel, but it was also kind of like, well, it's kind of a musty genre, and it took a lot of faith for all of them to hop on board it. Yeah,
we're grateful to them. Now we have a clip from Death on the Nile, your favourite. Rub hands together. This has a somewhat different tone. Approximately 6 words of dialogue there. Now, obviously, that film is primarily set aboard a boat, but we're seeing again introductions to characters with precious little dialogue. Mm-hmm. And I think it's safe to say they don't make movies like that anymore. Are you somewhat envious of those days?
No, I think you can make movies like this again.
You think so?
You just have to make it, yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll get right on that. Yeah, I'll get right on it.
I don't know, the notion that, I don't know. If any of you feel like you see a movie and feel like you could never make something like that again, I just say go out and make a movie like that again. You can do it. Yeah, they did it. Why can't we?
It's easy when Rian Johnson says it. It actually feels like I could do it.
You can go.
I've noticed, obviously, in your Knives Out films so far, that you haven't had a fully enclosed sort of train or boat or sort of mode of transport. Is there a part of you that's resisting doing that because these are so beloved?
No, not at all. No, and I mean, even though it's, we haven't been set on a train or boat, the job one is always, of a murder mystery, is always to find, an enclosing sphere for it. So, in Knives Out, we might not be on a boat in the middle of a river, but we're in a mansion with a defined family, and it had to have been one of them. Mm-hmm. And we're inside that house and kind of inside that family circle for the whole thing. Glass Onion, we're on an island. Might as well be on the boat, Mm-hmm. And then in Wake Up Dead Man, this is not a spoiler, I promise, but it's a church congregation, and we know it had to have been someone who was in the church congregation. So, no, I think it's just a different form. I would love to do something set on the more restrictive, I think, actually, the more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The reason why I bring it up is because about 6 years ago, when the first Knives Out movie came out, you told me about The Last of Sheila. Mm. Who here has seen The Last of Sheila?
Ooh,
I know why you've seen it. A couple of us. It is, I'm not going to say you changed my life, but it is an incredibly good murder mystery that was written by
Stephen Sondheim and Anthony Perkins. Yeah.
Now you're interested.
So I'm very, very excited that so few hands went up, because it meant that many more of you can go and look this movie up and find it, because it's an absolute delight. It is, so Stephen Sondheim was famously a huge murder mystery and puzzle nut. And he co-wrote this movie with Anthony Perkins, and it's kind of based on these elaborate, immersive murder mystery game parties he used to throw for his friends. And so it's an incredible 70s cast. It's like Diane Cannon. James Coburn plays an asshole movie producer who throws a big murder mystery party for his friends, and it all goes terribly wrong. And Richard Benjamin's great in it. It's so much fun. And if you've seen my film Glass Onion, you'll see it owes a lot to Last of Sheila. Yeah.
With that in mind, we're actually going to quickly cue up the next clip as well, because I want to tie these in together neatly. But this is a small section of The Last of Sheila. His voice alone. Oh, it's delicious. Now, I see so much of Birdie, obviously so much of Kate in what we saw just there.
Diane Cannon.
Incredible.
Yep.
So, could you draw some parallels, please?
Oh, I ripped the scene off for the scene where everyone showed. 100%. Just flat out stole it for the scene where they show up at the dock in Glass Onion, and the dynamic of the whole thing. I mean, it's one of my favorite films, and it's a sheer delight. Yeah, and also Ian McShane, young hot Ian McShane.
Still hot.
Still hot. And of course James Mason. It's just the whole thing is just so much fun.
The voices, so many amazing voices.
I know.
But what I particularly enjoy about Lost of Sheila and murder mysteries generally is their rewatchability. Do you have that within your mind when you are writing a piece, that you are aware that somebody that fully engages with it will watch it more than once, more than twice, more than 3 times? Does that live there in your head?
Yeah, a bit. I mean, it's hard to kind of it's hard to really kind of like do that math when you're doing it. But I think one thing that plays into that, that's kind of a natural byproduct of the way I approach kind of writing mysteries is, there's a great quote by one of the Ellery Queen writers where he said, "Yes, we play fair with the audience if the audience is an absolute genius." And the notion that, first of all, realizing when you're writing that clues and the mystery and the solution are never going to keep an audience entertained, and that what you need to build your movie around actually is the same thing you build any genre around, which is a protagonist who wants something, who can't get it, and the audience cares about that and wants to see them succeed or fail by the end. It's the basic building blocks of any story. And you really, because when you have all the tempting little bits and bobs and shiny baubles of a murder mystery in front of you, it's so easy to start leaning on those and to forget that those cannot hold the weight of a movie. So I think what that leads to for me is when you're planting clues, for instance, realizing the object is that, like, in a way, this does lead to a second viewing, because the object is not to plant a clue so that you're playing fair so the audience can access that clue towards the end and solve the mystery. The object is when the audience gets the reveal at the end, they think back and remember that clue and think, oh, the movie played fair with me. And it's almost like an illusion, but it's one that the audience is party to, I think. I don't think the audience wants to sit there doing math and trying to figure it out. I know I don't when I watch a murder mystery. But I am very aware when it gets to the end, if I don't have those things to go and tag back to during the course of it. So because of that, when you watch it a second time, you're going to notice those things, and it'll hopefully add a whole other level of satisfaction to it. Yeah.
Totally. And for me, the joy of the summations.
Yeah.
The uniquest, not a word, murder mystery trope is the summation. And to have the summation involve common sense rather than obscure knowledge or a crazy reference to something that most people wouldn't understand, that is part of the delight for me. You could conceivably have joined the dots if you thought laterally enough. Is that another part for you, not to go too into the weeds with?
That's always what you're aiming for. That's kind of the brass ring that you're reaching for always, is to have the audience feel not to, and the goal is not to present. I always like to say these movies should be roller coaster rides, not crossword puzzles for the audience. And the audience needs to be on a ride, and I don't think the audience is going to be sitting down and trying to work it all out, but it'll be even more satisfying at the end the more they feel like I could have worked it out if I had been bothered.
If that was my job to do so.
If that was my job, but it's not.
Can we talk a bit about humor? Because it's enjoyable to laugh at these characters that we're immediately getting to know. They're heightened, they're very charming, but there's a joy in laughing at them and with them. But where do you draw the line of what's too farcical or too silly? I mean, if you watch Glass Onion, you're maybe asking the wrong person. I love silliness. I know, but I think the line exists at. I think you can get away with or for me at least, I enjoy an awful lot of humor in a movie, and as long as that humor is character-based and based in the reality of the situation, even if it's a very silly situation and a very silly character, as long as it's grounded in that and it doesn't feel just like just a joke you're throwing in, then I think you can have quite a lot of it. Humor, I mean, whoever here is going to see Wake Up Dead Man today, it's in a way, it's a much more grounded kind of somber movie. I think it's still very funny, and maybe even a little more so because you're not supposed to fart in church, a little bit because of the seriousness of it. It makes the funny stuff, there's a little more contrast. The other thing is, I mean, just in terms of the practicality of writing, I don't want to tip my hand too much, but this is very useful. Humor is an incredible tool for planting clues. If you
plant a clue and get a laugh from the audience will think that laugh was the point of the of what they just heard, as opposed to tagging in their brain, oh, that's going to pay off down the line. I'll remember that. So it's also a very useful tool for that.
And it makes it more memorable in of itself.
Yep.
And more rewarding towards the end.
Yeah.
We're about to see one of my favourite scenes from the first Knives Out, which came out in 2019. See if you can hear the exact line that I genuinely wrote down in my notebook when I first saw it. I think you know the one. It just cut off before the legendary Michael Shannon says, "I will not eat one single iota of shit."
That was a Michael Shannon special. Yeah.
Pure riff.
That wasn't me. Yeah.
Delightful. Absolutely delightful. I don't want to get, again, too much into the nitty-gritty, but the blocking of that alone gives me, as a backseat director, just like there's so much going on there. How long would a scene like that take to assemble and shoot on the day?
Well, I mean, we didn't have all the time in the world with the movie, so it was less about. I think if I had shown up to try and figure it out on the day, it would have taken a week. But that's with this movie in particular is where I really. I think starting out making movies, I don't know, but I was very conscious of shots and always thinking about the camera and cool shots. It was with this movie, from the necessity of having all these shots where there were multiple people interacting in frame, and the visual information you were communicating is the relationship between them, that I really started thinking much more about blocking. And once you kind of open up that door in your head, you realize the great directors that you admire. Michael Curtiz was a master at it. Spielberg is a modern master of blocking. And as you really started rewatching a lot of my favorite movies and looking not at shots but at blocking and how directors handled the spatial relationship between characters and how that communicated in a scene like this, everyone's relationship to each other. And so it was more about storyboarding, even less for shots and more for me to kind of plan out what everyone's spatial relationship was going to be. And then that lets you cover it there are not many setups in that actually. If you kind of tag them and pay attention to it, it's a pretty efficiently shot scene. Because if you got into the woods of, okay, we have to cover this person and this person, there's no way we could have done it. Yeah. Stuff
we sadly take for granted. I'd also like to shout out some of the bits of business that we see on screen, particularly Jamie Lee Curtis doing the in the edit. You must be so often delighted and surprised by what your actors have done that you may not have even noticed on the day.
Yeah.
There's one I think you've mentioned before where Catherine Hahn checks her scent.
Oh yeah,
like
smells
this.
her pits. Yeah.
Smells her pits and just in the middle of a take.
Yeah.
Is that, again, part of the delight? Trust me, we're going to see it. Is that part of the delight of that casting, that assembly, is that you're sort of watching your puzzle come to life? You're seeing...
Yeah, absolutely. And I work with my editor, Bob Doucet, who's a wonderful collaborator in these. And I mean, that's the other... There is a... Like with Glass Onion, there was even more of this because there were more scenes where everyone was sitting around talking to each other. And you really, you get to a point where inevitably those scenes are carried by like a few main people. The Knives Out scene is a little bit of an exception. It's a little bit more of like a group game. But in Glass Onion, there were much more things where everyone is there, but it's really a scene between like three people.
Yeah.
So you cover the main bits, and then you get to a point at the end of the day where it feels a bit like grinding, but you have to basically start getting reactions from people. But you realize, and I always try and kind of make sure the actors know this is not just getting reactions in case, this is actually what the scene is built out of, is the actors' reactions to each other and listening and the little things in the background. Like one of my favorite things of that scene is a thing Michael Shannon just did that wasn't, the football goal when he realizes, I was just so delighted on set, and the fact that it lined up perfectly because you could see him back there, I was like, yes.
Now we've mentioned Glass Onion. Let's watch a brief clip from that film before we move on to Wake Up Dead Man.
Edward had a whole thing when he's like, someone switched the box. He's like, did you get it? I'm like, do I get what? He goes, I'm doing Pitt in 7, doing, what's in the box?
What's in the box? I always love pre-definite detective.
Pre-definite, yeah.
Just perfect. It's legit. Can we talk about the clownishness inherent in Benoit Blanc? Much like Poirot, to an extent, Marple, and I love Peter Wimsey and I love Raffles. They need to be somewhat foolish because they need to not seem like a full threat. What was it when you constructed Benoit that you wanted to emphasize in terms of him not coming across like a double-barreled shotgun ready to go off?
Yeah, there needs to be something. I mean, like you said, it's kind of, that's the one universal thing with all really good detectives. You see it in Columbo, you see it in a lot of every detective on screen, and I mean, it's also, though, it's a little bit malleable to the story that you're doing specifically. Like in Glass Onion, you kind of learn in the second half of it that Blanc is playing a very specific game in the first half, and he's kind of playing up his Southern buffoonery a little bit in order to get everyone to kind of not take him seriously. Whereas in the first one and the third one, it's a little bit different. But even for the audience, there's an element where you want. I don't know. Yeah, you want to. It's important to be able to slightly underestimate him because then you're rooting for him even a little bit more. Yeah.
Even though he is a genius, I think of Halle Berry.
Halle Berry.
And you go, no one talks like that. No, no one does talk like that.
Right.
But that's half the fun.
Yeah.
I'm aware of time, and you guys should have your own opportunity to ask better questions than I. But before we do,
is that Matthew Sharp? Our second AD from Wake Up Dead Man, Matthew Sharp, and also The Last Jedi. Yeah, right there.
I'm aware of time and the clips that we've been watching, but we're going to watch just a little bit of Wake Up Dead Man. We've
just roll the whole movie. Come on, let's go. Play. Come on.
It was a really bold swing making Oprah the villain, I've got to say. That was...
Spoilers, man.
Oh, I shouldn't have said it, guys. I shouldn't have said it.
Yeah.
Can we talk about locked room mysteries? They are so tricky to do.
Yeah.
How did you feel about finally attacking them as a concept this time around?
Yeah, that was kind of a big thing behind doing this. I wanted to give it a shot. So a locked door mystery is, and the author that we name checked there, John Dixon Carr, who's one of my favorites. He was a Golden Age detective novelist, wrote around the same time as Christie, but was nowhere near as popular as her. And he's fantastic, and he specialized in locked door mysteries and impossible crimes, where it's a classic thing. The man walks into his room with no windows, locks the door from the inside, and then they hear a thunk, they break down the door, and he's dead with like a dagger in his back. And it's this impossible scenario. And it's a fun subset of the genre because it's kind of the equivalent of a chess puzzle with just a few pieces on the board. And it's also something that's tricky to do in film because it generally requires lots of fiddly bits for the solution. And I don't know. Yeah, it was something that I love a good locked door or impossible crime, so I want to see if we could pull it off.
And we have Daniel Craig there with just that right amount of pomposity.
Yeah.
I imagine he's not a man that you're regularly giving notes to, but how do you modulate the blonkiness of his performances?
Generally, it's just me and him just giggling and laughing a lot, kind of. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, we do have a lot of conversations about, generally it happens before shooting. Generally, we'll go through the script and we'll get, go through and we'll play with the scenes and we'll end up doing some changes to them. And I think there's, I don't know, I couldn't even articulate, but there is an internal logic that we both share in terms of who this guy is and who he isn't. And I think, we do spend a lot of time just making sure that's right before we show up on set. Because
it is a darker film of the three, that's fair enough to say. How much did you enjoy the gothic nature of Wake Up Dead Man?
Well, that's another thing that John Dixon Carr really leans into. His books tonally always have an element of gothic horror to them. There's some wonderful books that he wrote, like Hag's Nook and The Crooked Hinge and The Mad Hatter Mystery. I mean, just these titles are they're fantastic. And he always has this incredibly rich, almost Edgar Allan Poe-like sense of dread, and he always also veers it as close as he can to the supernatural in ways that are always so much fun. So that was a huge part of this also, especially after sort of the sun-drenched broad comedy of Glass Onion, the notion of doing something that was in the pocket of Gothic horror, and also just for an audience to get kind of like a different season, I guess, you know.
And we were talking again earlier about the magnificence of Josh O'Connor, one of our finest. He is so charming and does so much heavy lifting in this film.
Yeah.
What was it like finding him, and what did you want to say with his character?
Well, I felt really lucky to find him. I mean, and especially finding him the moment that we did. It was because I hadn't been aware of him. Daniel knew him and knew him through Luca, and then I went and watched Challengers, and I watched La Chimera, and I just realized how special this person was. But yeah, he's extraordinary, and if we had tried for him now, I don't know if we would have gotten him, because he's shooting up. I can't wait to see everything he does in the future. Yeah, and the part of Father Judd, he's really the protagonist of the whole movie. You know, I mean, I won't talk too much about it because some of you will hopefully see it today. But similar to Janelle Monáe in the second one, or Anna de Armas in the first one, he's the one that you're really following. So it's important the audience is with him from step one.
For sure.
Yeah.
Guys, it's your time to shine.
I mean, the temptation. Thank you. The temptation for me is just that I love working with all these people. So and that all of them are always texting me asking if they exactly the same. But at the same time, I also a big defining feature of why I love making these things is the notion that they're each a separate novel on the shelf. And my goal is that with whenever the next movie is, you know, that the lead of that, you come out of that thinking, oh, I want more of that person. That's kind of the goal. And I like that fresh challenge with everyone. Also, selfishly, I love working with actors, and this means I get to work with more and more of them. So, yeah.
But a fantastic question, may I say. And also, a brief shout out to when you mention other mysteries that Benoit solved.
Yeah,
For example, in The Glass Onion, Catherine Hahn's character says, "You solved the murder with the belly dancer and the thing and the thing." I want to watch that as well.
It expands the world
Who's
really
next?
well.
We're going to go over here on the left.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I do this show with Natasha Lyonne called Poker Face that's kind of modeled after Columbo, which is you're right, it's a Hal Ketchum, where in the first act we see the murderer do the murder, we see who done it, we see how they did it, and then in the second act the detective comes in and it's all about how is the detective gonna find them, which is a genre I love because it seems like it shouldn't work. It seems like, why would an audience keep watching if they know this? And it works so well. I think it's actually a stronger narrative engine than a whodunit, actually. And it's because it's based on suspense and the cat and mouse game between the detective and the killer, as opposed to surprise. So much so that when you're writing a whodunit, my approach is you always almost have to manufacture another engine to be in it to make up for the lack of that throughout the movie. I don't know. It's a good question. Maybe it gave me the confidence to kind of do that. The truth is, Wake Up Dead Man is a much more traditional structure in terms of a whodunit than the first two movies. This is how most of Agatha Christie's books work, where in the first act you meet all the suspects, you get a sense of who's going to get killed. They get killed at the end of the first act, and then the detective shows up. That's kind of more par for the course. So, and yeah, I thought it would be interesting to kind of take it back to that, and then just kind of a lot of faith in Josh O'Connor to pull us through that first act.
I think it's
He's
well placed.
absolutely brilliant in it.
Thank you.
May I also add, have you had a chance to speak to Steven Spielberg much about his work with Columbo?
You know, I haven't. We did a screening in LA of his Columbo episode, and it was so much fun seeing it on the big screen. It's brilliant. Yeah.
Stunning.
Yeah,
Well
it's
worth reaching out for, trying to find.
It's great.
We're going to go to this lady here.
Your professors were probably right. It's a bad idea to. But at the same time, this is some. I guess. I guess my real answer to that is it's. The movie is very much about faith. It's also about religion and religion's intersection with this culture and politics right now in this present moment. And it's, I guess, the answer for me. The thing that kind of made me do it is just that it's personal to me. I grew up very religious. I grew up very Christian. I wasn't Catholic. I was evangelical Protestant, and I'm no longer a believer. But when I was in my teens and early 20s, it was my relationship with Christ is what I framed my entire world through, and it was something that was deeply important to me and personal to me, and something that I have lots of very deep and very complicated feelings about. And so I think that the fact that it was coming from a personal perspective as opposed to an essay that I was writing about the topic, I think any supposedly third rail topic that you have in your head, if you have a personal way into it, don't be afraid of approaching it, because then it's a conversation as opposed to a lecture. Yeah, I think it's kind of just part of it is you match the tone to the material. And so once with this one, I knew I wanted to talk about religion. I knew I wanted to have an impossible mystery. And John Dixon Carr, like I mentioned before, tonally really influenced it. It started pulling in that direction. Honestly, though, I think that, if you write and direct something, it's several years of your life. So having spent a few years in the Glass Onion world, as satisfying as that experience was, it feels really good to have something different for dinner the next day. It feels good to switch up your diet a little. And so, and it means it's a new challenge for you. It's something you haven't done before. And I think that's always really, really important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm afraid, I'm very sorry to say.
No!
I know.
One more.
We're going to go one more because the
Yeah.
man said so.
Yeah, look, I'm writing something right now. It's not a Benoit Blanc mystery. It's like an original, totally different thing to do next. And but I don't feel burnout doing these at all. If anything, I feel energized after doing this one. And as long as audiences want to keep seeing it, and Daniel and I are still having fun making them, and still feel like we can come up with stuff that feels, not just fresh, but feels like a fresh challenge for us, I think that'll translate to a new experience for the audience. And the second we feel like we're just turning the crank, we'll stop. But for now, I'd be thrilled to keep making these the rest of my life. Yeah.